Welcome to episode 337, Think Like a Pilot with Bobby Dutton. He actually is somebody that is really inspirational, loves flying, and he flies a really cool airplane. It's a Cirrus aircraft. You know, as pilots, we learn many skills and thought processes through our our accomplishments and our unique missions through exploring the world of aviation. You know, it's an amazing pastime that we have. We go through this environment called the air, and not many people get to do that. But the thought process of being a pilot can play a key role in the cockpit, but also benefits us in our personal place and also our business lives. And Bobby is actually a passionate aviator, which is really cool, who's enabled many through his keynote addresses and speeches, and he really translates those skills and passion that he has and as pilots and guides us towards an amazing airborne journey to an amazing life right here on the ground. Hey, Bobby, it's awesome having you on.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, Bobby, this is really cool because when I first saw you, I saw this really neat airplane in the background, and it was a Cirrus SR-22, and that kind of attracted me to you and what you do. And then when I saw you doing these talks, these keynotes about Think Like a Pilot, I was like, hey, we got to hear about this. But before we get into that, though, let's talk about your aviation journey, because you are somebody that's super passionate about flying, and that's what I really like about you. So tell us a little bit about how you got into flying and what brought you to the Cirrus.
I was one of those people that every airplane that's flown over since I was 0 years old to right now, I watched all of them. If a plane flew out my window right now, I would pause to want to take a look at it just because I love it. I've loved it since before I can remember. And when I graduated college, one of the first adult decisions I made was to get a credit card and max it out on flight training, just because I knew I needed to learn how to get in the air. I had got to go for some rides with my grandfather was a U.S. Airways captain. My dad was a licensed commercial pilot. My mom was a flight attendant.
Wow.
I've got test pilot uncles in my family tree. So it's definitely in my blood from both sides, and that all tracks. But I just love the idea of that intersection of things that are technical and physics and nerdy, and something that just is magic. And that to me is exactly what aviation is. I want to understand how this works so that if I get enough air moving over these wings, I can actually fly. Like, that's a dream. That's what people dream about. And if you put your mind to it and figure it out, you can create that magic for yourself and for others. And that's just always been such a special thing to me. Fast forward to the pandemic, which of course was 20 years later. I was working in events. And events were not doing very well. And for one thing, we needed to figure out how to survive financially, how to pay the mortgage. But on top of that, I needed a purpose. So even if I could figure out how to survive financially, sitting around at home while concerts were not a thing in the real world, while everybody was locked down, I needed something to do. And that was when I did a lot of my leveling up with aviation. So I had finished my instrument rating a few years prior. But during COVID, I started all my test prep for my CFI and my commercial rating and my advanced ground instructor rating. And I just kept leveling up and loved every minute of learning more and becoming more capable as a pilot. And as it turns out, as a person.
So when you were doing all this, and you didn't really have aspirations to be a commercial pilot, right?
Right. I would love to. And in 2020, that was definitely my contingency plan. But you know what they say, no better way to ruin your hobby than to make it your job. And unfortunately, I could see waking up at 4 a.m. at a Newark airport hotel to start 12 back and forths to LA and just saying, man, I used to really love this. And now it kind of feels like work. So I'm lucky to keep them separated right now.
Absolutely. And that's something that I think is really important. The reason I wanted to have you on Stuck Mike is someone who thought about doing that, the Newark to LA's. By the way, I do that all the time, and I absolutely love it. But you have to really enjoy that. And that's something that not everybody does. And that's what I love about general aviation is that no matter if you're into aviation as a career or if you're getting into aviation as a hobby, you can still level up, like you said. I try to convince people to try to get as many ratings as you can, because especially as an instructor, you can affect so many lives and you can introduce so many people to this wonderful magic of flight like you described it. It truly is a magic carpet. But then you can actually dispel some of that magic by teaching them how to actually use the airplane. So fast forward. So you did this training, and I think you mentioned you were in Bedford, in Mass, and that actually there a lot of our folks out there that listen are from that area, and learned you're flying in the Northeast. What kind of challenges did you have? Because a lot of people say, "Oh, you can't learn to fly up there; it's going to take forever."
Well, it's the other way around. If you do learn to fly in the Northeast, you're ready to fly anywhere, which is amazing. Maybe with the exception of DC airspace. But I remember learning from my instructor, Jim Henry, and just the fact that Bedford is a Class D airspace, which means there is a tower, it is controlled. We are under Logan International Airport's Class B airspace. So as soon as you take off, you're already juggling two different controllers depending on exactly where you go, which is complicated, but great practice. You get very comfortable knowing that there's always boundaries to be looking for and people to be talking to. And it's almost when you get outside of that airspace and you're just cruising along and there's nobody that needs to worry about you, it's like, oh, this is actually pretty fun and easy. And yeah, I'll deal with them when I get back. But it's a good training environment because it sets that standard.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that because, I did most of my training in the Northeast and I did my instrument training in the winter. It can happen. Don't get discouraged by those snowy days. They go away and they become very bright and sunny days too. So you definitely can get out there and fly. It's just a little bit chillier out there and you may have to defrost the wings. That's another lesson you get to learn that you wouldn't get to learn if you were down south or down in anywhere in Arizona, Southern California. That's for sure.
That's right.
One thing that I think is really cool about your background is, and this is something that one of the main reasons I really want to have you on, is talk a little bit about your airplane is not just fun, it's a tool, and you use it as a tool for certain things in life. So tell us a little bit about how you use the airplane as a tool.
Well, the biggest way that aviation has affected me on the ground is thinking, and you foreshadowed this a little bit. Think Like a Pilot is my speaking business, and it's been fascinating as a business owner, just to learn how this kind of organized, structured aeronautical decision making has absolutely changed the way I'm an owner, I'm a manager, I'm a leader, I'm a communicator, and to articulate that as a way to benefit folks, regardless of what their challenges are on the ground, has been a really cool journey. And the way I like to set that up is, if you think about the way commercial pilots sound on the intercom when you're getting ready to take off, we make fun of them, right? There's this cliche pilot voice that sounds bored, right? And you want to give us an example of a PA announcement? Let's hear it.
Well, I don't even make announcements like that. I'm just like, hey, folks, welcome aboard. I'm so excited to have you here. I'm like the total opposite. I can't wait to fly you to Disney.
Nice.
And so I'm a little bit the opposite of that type of, the person, oh, welcome aboard this flight over to Los Angeles. I'm your captain today. We'll be flying at 39,000 feet, and we'll get there at 12:15 in the afternoon. And, oh, by the way, I'm going to take a little nap along the way. That type of thing is what you hear from the pilots usually.
Exactly. And it's so pronounced and so consistent that... Yeah, they love this. Yes, they're qualified. Yes, they're good at this. But what we as civilians hear is this person is so ahead of things that they're almost falling asleep. And at the same time, it's not because they're bored. It's like they're dealing with crazy speeds, with a lot of lives depending on every decision and getting it right. And so, what can we learn from them? How come me as a human trying to get through my inbox on a Tuesday morning is so stressful and overwhelming? Like, how come I don't sound bored and relaxed? And how can I benefit from that? Because they're certainly doing something right. And that's what I wanted to get into with Think Like a Pilot.
So the things we're getting right as a pilot, you can definitely translate to the ground. But one of the biggest thing is dealing with, and we all deal with this, is the stress in flying, but also in life. In aviation, we have this way of disconnecting from that stress and just concentrating on flying the airplane. What can we glean from that? I'm sure you have some other examples as far as managing stress as people on the ground.
I think the biggest one is something every pilot knows: aviate, navigate, communicate. And what that really is telling us is pilots do have a lot going on, probably more than we do in our inbox on Tuesday morning, but they know which one thing is important right now, and they know how to do it. And once that's done, they know exactly what they're going to need to take care of next. And they're going to get so far ahead of things that if something does come up that's unexpected, they've got the presence of mind to deal with that in a way that's smart and intentional also. And that's what we need to take away, because being overwhelmed by 75 emails is not useful. Just like worrying about every button switch in your flight at the same time is overwhelming. So what we need to do as humans is say, okay, yeah, I've got 75 emails. These people think they're going to get an answer from me. Some of them probably will, but it's going to be on my terms. I'm the pilot in command. I'm going to figure out which one needs my full attention right now. I'm going to give it to that task, and I'm going to do it well, and then I'm going to move on to the next one. And by applying that sort of pilot thinking on the ground, I'm now more productive than I ever was before, and I'm able to get more done in a day than I used to in a week. And people look at me like I'm that boring sounding pilot because I'm just like, yeah, I'm running a really complicated business, but it's going great. I know exactly what I need to focus on. I know exactly what I need to do next. And when the curveballs pop up, we're going to be ready for those too.
Absolutely, and it have that like savoir-faire, where you're like, oh yes, I've done this every day for the past 20 years. There's going to be no problems. If something happens, it's going to be dealt with very easily and efficiently, and we'll move on. Oh, that plane, that engine out there that just fell off. Don't worry about that.
Yeah, we'll
get on the ground. We'll figure it out later when we get on the ground.
Yeah, we got more engines.
we got another one.
Yeah, it's interesting to think about. If pilots sounded as stressed as we do most of the time, we'd be worried. So by sending that message to our colleagues on the ground about, I'm super stressed, I'm super overwhelmed, we've kind of been taught that is what successful people sound like. And I think that's something we need to get ahead of. So I would rather sound like the organized, in-control pilot than the frazzled, overwhelmed business person. And to me, that's a better way to say I'm successful because I know what I'm doing. And I'd rather have that message be reflected by the folks that I work with and the people I talk to.
Very true. And not just in those stressful situations, but in general. One of the things that we learn as pilots, interestingly enough, at the airlines, I teach at the airlines, and one of the parts of that training is efficiency. You have to get ready at the gate to get out to the runway with a certain amount of time. And if you can't do that, then you're not going to be able to become an airline pilot. We do that as pilots in general aviation. We're able to efficiently move from point A to point B by training over time and learning things from other pilots that we fly with and flight instructors. But we can take that efficiencies and use them also on the ground. So like, do you have an example of something that maybe you do and have done in flight that is some type of thing that you use, a tool or whatever that you also use in the ground?
I mean, again, it's just kind of the way my brain has learned to work. And this morning, staring at my inbox, for a minute, I was like, I got too many things. Oh, these people have questions now. Oh, this person didn't get my message last week. And I had a brief moment of like, this is too much. And we've all felt like that in the cockpit as well. You realize I'm scrambling. I'm trying to catch up to things, but whatever's going on right now is not getting my full attention. That's dangerous. And so by being able to flag that behavior in my own mind and saying, okay, I'm stressing about too much right now. I'm not getting any one thing done well. Take a deep breath, prioritize, like filter out the stuff that doesn't need me right now and get back ahead of it. And I found today that just taking a half an hour, drinking coffee and going through that inbox, I'm not doing all the things, but I'm looking at all of them. And I'm saying, this doesn't need me right now. This needs an hour and I'm going to do it on Friday. This can delete, this I'm going to forward to somebody else. And just by processing things, now I'm able to get ahead of the airplane again in my mind, and then I feel much better. And so that's the behavior I try to kind of cultivate on the ground.
So have you learned things on the ground that actually translate to the flight deck?
Ooh, interesting. I think the way we communicate with people is so important. Not everyone needs all the info all at the same time. So I've gotten really good at, in an email, if I've got 50 people saying, we got to change the date of this meeting, everyone send me your availability. And everyone sends these huge lists of availability, and no one's really tasked with being the one that selects it. Of course, there are tools like, what's it called? The calendar tool that helps everyone choose something. But like, to me, I'll pay attention to all this. Then I'll be like, March 6th, 2 p.m., Bedford. Does that work for everyone? And this is a much more action-oriented, brief, targeted communication, as opposed to this useless, long threads with too many people on them. And that, I think, is true in the air, too. Thinking about, the perfect information to give to the right person at the right time. And like an example of that is, you're taxiing and you see that another airplane might need to use the taxiway or turn around for some situation. I'm aware of the situation and I'm able to give some information that's not necessary, but I'll just say, hey, ground, like, I can pause here for a minute. Or, and they're like, oh, yeah, that would actually help us do something we need to take care of. So just being really specific. It's about the right targeted piece of information to the right folks at the right time is great, whether you're on the ground or in the air.
And we've all heard them in the air, right? You go on them, taking a left at the lake and then coming back and shooting this straight in approach. I don't need all that information. Just tell me where you are.
Exactly.
And that's something that I think is really important in understanding communications and something that takes practice. Bobby, before we get too far into even the flying and the future of flying that you're going to be doing, and I know you're doing a lot of this on the ground in talking. Where can they find you? Is there a website they can look up while we're talking?
Yeah, thinklikeapilot.com is my speaking business, and that's been my big professional focus lately. And I've also got
thinklikeapilot.com
or @pilotthinking on Instagram for bite-sized content.
Awesome. We will definitely send people over there. There's some cool pictures of what's that color again? It's like I'm not going to describe it. It's like a green. The Cirrus green that's in the background. That's really cool looking airplane. Somebody who flies a Cirrus is going to tell me in the show notes here what that color is. But that is really awesome. And talking, let's go switch back to flying a little bit. In flying, what is like your favorite thing about the Cirrus? I'm curious because that's a plane you fly a lot.
Sure. They're the CAP system, of course, everybody loves, which is the Cirrus airframe parachute system, and it gives a lot of people peace of mind. I would say it gives my family more peace of mind than me because I like the airplane and would be okay trying to figure out how to land safely in any situation. But knowing that in a pinch, the whole airplane can lower down on its own parachute and do it in a survivable way is nice to know. But in general, the reason I fell in love with the Cirrus, I remember doing a BFR, a biennial flight review, with an instructor. And a tip I got from an instructor years ago, way back in my training, was use the BFR as a way to learn something. Because if you do your comfortable flight that you've done 1,000 times, sure, you'll pass, or you'll get judged on something you should have been doing differently this whole time, which is embarrassing. But better yet, say, I want to fly a new airplane, or I want to fly a harder route into Boston airspace. Like, can we do this together? During the course of that flight, you're going to prove what you needed to prove to get your currency, but you've got a great opportunity while you've got a paid instructor in the other seat to learn something. And so that's what shifted me from, I was in the Warrior for training, like a lot of people, but wanted to get into a technically advanced aircraft with the glass cockpit and some newer tech. First, I tried the Diamond Star DA-40. Didn't love it. I felt like it fit weirdly into the plane. The way the yoke was on a stick was neat, but I don't know. I didn't really click with it. And then I hopped in the Cirrus SR-20 at first, and I just felt like this plane was an extension of my body. I understood what it wanted. It was responding in the right way. It was like when you drive a car that's just comfortable to you from the first moment, and I loved it. You could tell the difference with the smooth air. Cirrus has no rivets and just perfectly smooth surfaces everywhere. You feel like you're sliding through butter any way you go. And I was smitten from day one, and flew a lot in the SR-20, and then got up into the SR-22, a little wider, a little faster, a little longer range. And it's hard to go back. I've been forced back into the Warriors occasionally, and it makes you realize how good you've got it in the Cirrus. So I love it.
You went from the 20 to the 22, SR-20 to 22. What was the transition like? What were some of the challenges?
It was pretty easy. Speed was the biggest one. The 22 likes to go faster. And so, especially when you're in this mindset of, I want to be cautious, I want to get it right, I'm not totally confident in this aircraft yet, what you need is to go faster. And the last thing you feel like doing in that moment is go faster. So you've got to overcome that. I remember my first flight in the 22, we were doing some IFR. We were going long and high, and my instructor kind of tapped me on the shoulder in the middle of a bunch of other stuff, and he said, "Hey, see that city?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "What city is that?" And I was like, I don't know. We've been up for an hour or two. I was like, "Is it Worcester?" And he goes, "That's Poughkeepsie, New York." And I was like, "No kidding."
Wow.
So just learning the changes that different speeds can have on your day is important, and that was eye-opening for me.
Yeah, you can always, bring that throttle back, but it is something to have to get used to is that extra speed, that's for sure. But say you were going to start, would you suggest somebody getting into, say, the SR-22 or the 20? Do you think someone could learn how to fly in that?
I adore the 20, and the only reason I'm not flying the 20 more now is it was a lease back from a private owner, and it's gone. It's in Florida now, and it makes me sad. But the 20 is wonderful, and I think starting on the Garmin Perspective Plus system, yes, you've got to honor the basics and you've got to understand your steam gauges, but to start understanding with the new technology is it serves you. More capability in the cockpit can be good for safety and technique as well. So it shouldn't be seen as a shiny upgrade. It should be seen as new ways to keep you and your passengers safe.
Yeah, absolutely. You said about wider, when you were talking about that going from the 2022, is it the cockpit or is it the airplane that you're talking about that's wider?
I believe the wingspan's wider. I don't know the specs off the top of my head. Cockpit feels the same. You're just a little higher up off the ground, so the wheels hit the ground a little sooner than you expect.
I tell you, though, that cockpit, that flight deck in general, the airplane, it's easy to get your family and friends into because they're moving into something that they're very familiar with, and it's like a sports car. And I'm sure your family was the same.
Yeah, it's weirdly comfortable, and it's to be able to fit stuff in. The one catch with it has been gas and cargo. So if you've got 4 adults and full gas, you're probably overweight already with 0 luggage. And we've all done the weight and balance checklists, and we know how to calculate that. But at first, it kind of felt like a formality. I'm in a Warrior with an instructor, and I'm not carrying anything, so I'm always within limits. But I remember the first time I was in a Cirrus on my own. I said, "Oh, well, someone asked if we can pick somebody up, and it's far away, so I'd like to top off the gas." And I said, "Oh, no kidding. We are not safe to take off right now." Glad to figure that out on the ground, of course, rather than at the end of a runway when you're not in the air yet.
Absolutely. So what's next for you, Bobby, as far as in the air and also on the ground?
Sure. I am loving this speaking stuff, and it is really starting to take off, pun intended. So a big part of my professional focus is going to be developing these talks, getting out there and figuring out who can benefit from this kind of thinking. I'd love to find lots of conferences that just need a new perspective on stress management and time management. And I think this could benefit a huge range of people. So I want to find them and connect with them and get out there and spread this message.
thinklikeapilot.com. That's how you can find Bobby Dutton. And one of the things that I really think is important is that you get out there and you learn something always. And whether it's in your life or in aviation, and if you just want to look at some cool airplanes, check out the website too. There's some really cool pictures there. But I think you'll definitely learn something from Bobby. And Bobby, your energy, it's infectious. I love it. And I'd love to see you at one of the air shows and maybe up in Bedford or next time I'm in Massachusetts. And if somebody wants to reach out to you, they can go to thinklikeapilot.com.
Absolutely. Yep.
We're going to love to hear about some of your flying adventures in the future, so keep in touch, but also some of your speaking engagements. I'm really excited about that for you. Bobby Dutton, I said Button, but I meant to say Dutton. And and one of the things that, it sounds like Button, it's Dutton. One of the things that I think is really cool about Bobby is that he's taken this aviation and this life in aviation and has actually transformed other people's lives that are on the ground while he's transformed his life by flying through the air. So Bobby, I really appreciate your being here. And if you're listening right now, I encourage you to check it out, thinklikeapilot.com. And if you're thinking about getting into aviation as like a career, the easy way to do that is listen to our other show, aviationcareerspodcast.com. But say you're somebody that thinks it's a little bit expensive to fly, well, you have you covered there too. We have scholarships for everybody in our directory of scholarships, and you go to stuckmikeavcast.com/free and get a free scholarships guide from our friends over at Stratus Financial. They actually will give one away by using the coupon code Stratus. And that is actually one of those directories that I'm very passionate about because it's open to everybody. There's scholarships for people that are non-traditional, older people like me that just want to get, say, your seaplane rating or move forward in their careers or their lives. There's just something out there for everybody. But the most important thing you do, just in anything in aviation, is don't just sit there and do nothing. Learn something every single day. Move forward every single day in your flying life, and try to get out there and spread that passion, just like Bobby has done with his website and also with his speaking engagements. Go check him out at thinklikeapilot.com. I really appreciate your listening and watching here on YouTube. We'll talk to you next episode. Safe flying out there.